and it's just been difficult to figure out who the right people are to make that happen. But I'm happy we finally met you and getting this going and getting a good discussion going. I'm going to start out with a real positive thing that we're doing, which specifically for you in employment issues and so forth. We have a couple of Hmong officers, deputies, and we're going to be hiring. In fact, we just put out a press release today, I believe, regarding hiring for deputies, and I would love to see a bunch of applicants come from here. Multiple reasons why, but I think it's just good. We're very diverse in the communities that we reach out to, of course, in Milwaukee, and I'd like to see, if possible, more people from this community become part of it. It's good. We have a few Asian officers, but it's definitely in the minority, if you will, of the amount of them. So I would highly encourage you, if you have individuals, I think it's 21 years old, 60 hours of college credit, and they can apply. Our school will be starting, our training school will start probably at the end of December, first part of January, so they can apply to the county. So
But the application process is a very small window. It actually closes, it's only open for 2 weeks, and it closes on June 25th.
Okay.
But I would be happy to send you a link to that so you can
great.
direct any interested parties.
Yeah.
And I believe your email, you were the contact with our office, so I have your email and I will send that to you. I'll make a note of it.
Great, thanks, Fran. We'll definitely share that out. And I'll share it with the rest of the groups too.
yeah, and I mean we're definitely looking for female and male officers. So you know, when you're in your position or whatever, I mean, the more that apply, the merrier. We'd like to see that. So just throw that out there as a start piece.
And then also maybe perhaps as a point of contact, our Deputy VANG could also be a resource to those that have questions, just to fully understand, because it's a pretty lengthy process and procedure, and he's been through the whole systems and succeeded, so that might be another resource for anyone interested.
What was his name?
It's he says it's HUA thing.
I'm not sure how to spell it.
I'll look it up. I have to look it up because I'm not
first
bad
name
with that.
and then you can contact him. You know, it's got Fran or myself. We can get you that too. We get you his contact information.
Great.
So yeah, I mean, I'm very serious about that. So if that's possible, we'd love to see it.
Great.
All right. So you want to know a little bit about what we do?
Yes.
Okay. So the sheriff. We'll kind of make a little pie chart here. So the sheriff is over the 19 municipalities in Milwaukee County, if you will. Okay. So you got about 900,000 people in Milwaukee County. So all of the suburbs that are part of Milwaukee County, the sheriff is technically, if you will, encompasses all of that. But every single one of the 19 municipalities has its own police agency. So what we try to do is avoid overlapping, doing the same exact thing. So we have, the sheriff's office has some very distinct things that only our office does. So I'll go through, it's about 5 major areas that we're involved in, and a good portion of those are totally different than any of the 19 police agencies. So most of you are familiar with the Milwaukee Police Department, which of course is Chief Alfonso Morales. They have about 1,800 officers. Okay, so they're the biggest one. In Greenfield, Hales Corners, Brown Deer, you can just go through the bunch, have their own police agencies. All right, so here's what the sheriff by statute is required to do. So the first thing is the sheriff is in charge of the Milwaukee County Jail. So you've got the 960 bed jail. That is my responsibility. So the municipal agencies, the 19 agencies, if they make an arrest and they need to, quote unquote, have them placed in jail until their court date, municipalities drive their prisoners down to our jail. We book them into our jail, register them, maybe that's a easier word, and then we keep them throughout their court process until they're released. So that's my responsibility. We have 34,000 inmates come through our jail every year. It's a lot. And again, we only have 960 beds, so most of the people that come in, it's a very quick turnaround. They'll come in for 2-3 days, they'll get to court, they'll get released, they'll, they pay their fines or whatever they have to do. The first thing, as we explained, I have oversight of the Milwaukee County Jail. You might also be familiar with the House of Correction in Franklin. All right, the Franklin facility is separate from what I do. So the Milwaukee, or the county executive is in charge of the Franklin facility. I'm in charge of the jail, but our inmates basically go back and forth between those two facilities. So there's about 2,000 inmates between the two systems right now, between Franklin and downtown. Just one more little tidbit here. So out of those 2,000 inmates, we have about 1,200 what's called pretrial detainees. So these are individuals in my jail, and some of my overflow goes to the House of Correction. These are individuals that have to get through the court system. They've not been convicted yet. So then you have another approximately 800 convicted low-level misdemeanors or low-level felons that will be down at this Franklin facility, okay? So that's number one. Second major thing by statute I'm required is to serve process papers. So any legal papers through the court system that need to get served, that can't be done, if you will, by a private service, because some can if they're under certain categories. But the sheriff is to serve legal papers, if you will. That's why you see cars on occasion going around stopping and seeing folks. Third thing that I'm mandated to do is I have to patrol the Milwaukee County Expressway system. So we've got approximately 200 miles of expressways in the county, from border to border, if you will. That's our responsibility. So the jail, we've got about 250 correctional officers that take care of that. I have 272 deputies that take care of the other things we're talking about, so that's part of what the expressway is underneath the deputies. That's about 60 deputies. The other thing I'm mandated to do is have bailiffs in the court system. So we have about 90 deputies that are assigned to the various courts downtown, and then a children's court in Wauwatosa. That's under my jurisdiction. We supply security for the airport, for Mitchell Airport. So we've got another 50 deputies assigned to that. And of course, when you're looking at the numbers, that includes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and everything that we're talking about, except for courts, which of course only function during business hours. So we have the airport, I have the jail, we have the expressway system. We have a couple of deputies that are assigned to the medical complex where Freighter, Children's, all those hospitals are. So they have their own private security, but if there's something that rises above the private security level, then we'll handle it. Or if somebody's really getting out of control, acting criminally, so forth. Let's see, what am I leaving out?
Did you do TEU parks?
Yeah, parks.
Lakefront.
Right. So we have. Again, we have 272 deputies. Now here's kind of the weird thing that I'm going to throw out there. So there's 144 different parks in Milwaukee County.
Right.
So you would think we probably got a whole lot of deputies to cover that, right? Well, based on what's left, we have 15 deputies left. I like the expression you just gave, because that's the one I give every time I think about it. It's mind-boggling. So we have 15 deputies that have to take care of the entire lakefront, the other parks. So I've met with all of our, not all, I've missed maybe one or two that haven't been able to meet yet, but the local police agencies, as well as the mayors and the presidents of the various villages and cities, they understand, because we're limited in the number of deputies that we have. And I hate to use this, to say it this way, but it's the best way I can say it: the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Right.
And also, if a particular park in a particular neighborhood is having a serious issue, I tell them, just call me direct. We'll get people to wherever they're needed. One of the key parks, of course, that a great percentage of the Milwaukee County population uses is the lakefront. So Veterans Park, North Point, down by the War Memorial, that beautiful huge sections, South Shore Park. Again, that's our responsibility for the most part. But here's how things have to work. When you have that few deputies and that huge, massive expanse of property to take care of, that's where it's absolutely essential that we work cooperatively with the other municipal agencies. So I have a great relationship with Chief Morales, and again, the other 18 chiefs that some of your community may live in the different suburbs and whatever. So that, I mean, I go to what's called MCLEA, Milwaukee County Law Enforcement Executive Association, once a month. We meet, we eat, which always brings people together, right? We spell fellowship F-O-O-D, so you get together, you break bread together, you work together for positive solutions, and that's pretty much our scope. So that pretty much explains what we do. If you're talking, the thing that we don't do, and because it's the municipal agency, so if you're talking about, okay, there's a shooting, let's say, on a city street. Our deputies may respond to that if it's in progress, but MPD or whatever agency is going to take that investigation. If it happens in a park, we would work with that particular agency, and we determine who would take the lead on it and who basically would help and assist. So,
civil process.
yeah, yep, that was number 2. I think we talked about serving papers. Yeah, good. So that's pretty much how that works. So I mean, we build task forces. So we have multiple individuals in task force. So I can rattle those off. So we work with HIDA, which is a high intensity drug trafficking abatement. That's a federal group. We're involved with that. We work with the FBI Violent Crimes Task Force. So we have one person that's in there. And when I say one, it's like that's when we were as small as we are, that's all we can put on a task force. But I like to call those the force multipliers, because when we have multiple people from multiple jurisdictions, it allows us to do a lot more than just with one person. So the task forces are key. One of the things you might have seen up specifically on Capitol, we have a Chief Morales, myself, so Milwaukee Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, and State Patrol. We have shall we say, aggressive driving campaigns going on. We've done them on Capitol recently, Fond du Lac Avenue. We'll hit a couple more areas. But if all of a sudden you see a saturation and a whole bunch of different kind of police cars showing up, we're just working, trying to get some of the crazy driving that occasionally you see. People running red lights, screaming down the highway, smashing into people and whatever. So we're really working hard to try and stop that. So those are the key things. I'm gonna zero back to patrol and a few other key things we do when we're out there. So these are kind of the initiatives now that I've implemented since September 1st when I became the sheriff. So I'll kind of lightly touch on them. If you have questions, stop me, I'll be happy to answer them. So one of the key things that I started with was I implemented what's called saturation patrols on the Expressway. I was asked by a village president this morning that I met what he's like, sometimes and if this happens to be a North Lakefront village, if you will, and the question was asked, why do you spend time on the expressways pulling over speeders and so forth? And it's like, well, here's why. Last night, just for example, 2 people died on the expressway. So you had a motorcycle, unfortunately, as reported, going at extremely high rate of speed. They couldn't negotiate a curb, and we had a very tragic death with the driver and the person on the back that unfortunately died. So what we've had 5 deaths on the freeway already this year. Last year alone, and here's kind of to me it's a staggering statistic, 5,000 crashes on the Milwaukee County Expressway system. That's just the expressway, we're not counting the city streets. To me, it's up there. So one of the key things, and I like to give my wife a little bit of credit on this one, she's like, Rich, you gotta get people to slow down, I'm scared to drive on the freeway.
That's true.
And I'm like, she's absolutely right. Everyone has a wife, or not everyone, not everybody should have one, maybe, but, you know, the family members, do you want your children, or your spouse, or your loved one, or your significant other, whatever it may be, it's dangerous out there, and it's like it shouldn't be. So we put a concerted effort to slow down. You're like, okay, so you're ticketing people going 5 over. We're not even talking about anything like that. I'm talking about people that are going 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles an hour of the speed limit down, you know, zipping in and out of traffic, horrifically dangerous. So we're targeting what I like to call the aggressive drivers. You know, mom going to school a couple minutes late and she may be a couple miles an hour limit. We're not interested in that.
And Sheriff, so real quick, so how many deputies do you have out on the expressway?
Okay, we have about 60 total deputies on the expressway. Now that's 3 shifts. So when you count vacation times and off time and all of that, you average about 8 deputies a shift, period. So it's significantly gone down since I started in 1986. We had 900 deputies. Today we have 272.
Any particular reason for that?
Yeah, budget downfalls. Now, to be fair, about 250 of that 900 are now, instead of being deputies, they used to be all deputies working in the jail. Now, instead of deputies, we have correctional officers that work there now. So that number is fair to take out of the equation. So technically, if we had apples to apples, it would have been about 650, now down to about 272. But it's the county budgets that have significantly reduced our staff, and things like we used to have transit patrol and much more robust parks patrol. We used to have at least 2 deputies per, we have 6 sectors throughout the county. Now we average 1.25 deputies per sector, where it used to be 2+ at times. So it is a lot more with a lot less. So it's unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. Budgets are tight and taxpayers get that. Anything else on that?
No.
Okay.
How has that been working out though? So let's say there was a budget cut.
Yep.
I mean, how has that been working out?
Not good, to be quite frank. Now, if I tell you how much our budget is, it's one of the largest budgets within county government. Our budget to run the sheriff's office is $40 million a year. Now, it sounds like a great deal of money, but here's how it breaks down. Out of that $40 million, $20 million of that runs the jail. The other $20 million is specific to everything else that we do as a sheriff's office. On top of that, $40 million between the House of Correction in Franklin and the Milwaukee County Jail is another $16 million specific to mental health and medical contract. So Armor Correctional Health Care, which does that contract for both facilities, that's only $16 million, and I say that facetiously. That's $16 million for the 2,000 inmates, 24/7, 365. So it's very expensive. And we do have a very vulnerable population.
That's what I was just wondering too. So the things that, how do they determine the budget? So let's say if there's a citizen need.
Yep.
I mean, does that play a role or play a factor in whether or not the budget increases or decreases?
Yeah, the budget is all designed by the county executive's office. So, and again, I want to make it real clear. I have a very good working relationship with the county executives. We've been we're making a great deal of progress since I took over in September. We've had multiple meetings. We're working on the budget process together. He, of course, is a fiscal, he believes strongly in fiscal responsibility. I do too. Well, let me segue and then I'll come back. So when I took over in September, we were $6.8 million in deficit as the sheriff's office alone. $6.8 million. Being that I'm on much more the fiscal conservative side, it's like I believe in a balanced budget. I don't want to abuse the taxpayers if we can reduce it, I want to. So bottom line, I only had 4 months to reduce it. I got it down to about 50%. So we're about 3.1, 3.2.
Since September.
Yeah, so we broke down about 3.6 million. I was able to reduce that deficit, and it's like, well, how in the world do you do that? So there are multiple overtime assignments, some security details that just, quite frankly, at that point weren't necessary. We got rid of those to get rid of a ton of the overtime that we were expending. All the commodity spending I froze, so in other words, chairs, desks, uniforms, upgrade this, upgrade that, new carpeting, new desks, froze. So by just freezing everything, we were able to break down about 50% of that. So I made the promise, right, politician promise, that in 2018, should I still be here, and at that point the governor had not stated I was going to be here yet, so I kind of left out that whole process of why I'm where I am today, but I made the promise in 2017 that 2018 will run a balanced budget. So it's now, what's the date, June 14th, I believe?
Yes.
And if you look at our balance sheet, you'll find that there is no red ink on it. So managed to literally balance the budget.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, again, I don't like wasting taxpayer money.
Right.
So now go to your question, well, what happens if you have a need in the community and so forth? Well, the way the budgeting process works, so the county executive's office, they'll set up a baseline budget for every single organization that's under county government, if you will. Even though I'm a constitutionally appointed officer, we still run by the county budget. So we're, if you will, we're forced to fall within those guidelines. And forced is kind of a harsh word, but that's just the way it is. So if we have, let's assume we have another horrific incident like Sherman Park happens, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden the overtime's out, you know, it's going crazy. You've got to put tons of resources into it to get the community safe and secure. It's going to be a ton of overtime money, and quite frankly, it is what it is because you're not budgeted for catastrophic things like that. So that can lead to, if you're not careful, it could lead to a significant deficit. So you mentioned that you're a Christian. There's got to be some prayer in this and asking God not to allow that type of thing to happen, quite frankly. So, and you do, you just, if that happens, you may have to go to the county board and say, you know, man, you saw what happened, this is what's happening, we need these resources. They may be able to reach into their contingency fund and say, here's some excess money to help with the situation, but you're kind of at the mercy of the money that's in the budget. So fortunately, we haven't had that this year. I'm trusting over the next 2 months it will stay calm and nothing else of a disaster happens. But yeah, that's a tough thing. You know, you just
and with budget in general, I mean, there's always a purpose with budget. So I'm trying to understand. Let's say you did cut it down 50%. So where's the rest of that money allocated to? Do you know, or you don't know? Or is it allocated back to whether it's the department, technology, or cars, or whatnot?
Okay.
Because I mean, I understand you trying to, citizens, taxpayers and whatnot.
Yep.
But again.
Okay, so if we had access, which we don't. We have zero excess. Okay. We are running this close to thin line.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. So there's no play. I still have a frozen commodities budget. I won't. The only way I'll let anybody spend any money is they absolutely got to. I mean, if somebody sat on your desk and it broke into 6 pieces, that's what's got to happen to get a new desk today.
Okay.
So yeah. So that's the only way I can control the budget, but we're literally, I mean, I am on a tightrope. There's no play.
Okay.
Is that decrease in the budget, it's going to be permanent, or is that at some point the county going to start increasing?
Yeah, the budget is a yearly process, so we're just starting to work on the 2019 budget right now. So I've met with the county exec, I'll meet with his budget people. In fact, I have a meeting with them on Monday. What I'm trying to get the county exec's office and the supervisors to do is to get a realistic budget. Okay, so if this makes sense. When I walked in the door January 1st of this year, there was a $3 million structural deficit built into the budget. In other words, if we just ran exactly as the budget states, or what the positions were, what they allowed us to have, there was $3 million was missing right off the bat. So that's a structural deficit on its face. So what I'm trying to do now that I'm in office, I'm trying to get the county executive to work with me, and he is, by the way. We've been very good together right now. So what we're trying to do is get it to where there's no structural deficits. Everything is literally exactly, here's the money, here's exactly what it can be spent on. It's not you gotta try and figure out where $3 million by cutting other things and so forth. So a realistic, real-time budget. Sure.
So with the jail system taking about half of your budget there,
Yep.
has there been any efforts to start any programs to reduce the crime rate, or and then follow up is does the sheriff office take care of these programs, or does it go up to the county, or is it the police department that takes care of?
All right, so here's this, again, all my answers are kind of long, but it's kind of long. All right, so I've been in the sheriff's office 32 years, okay? I've been on what's called the Community Justice Council. In fact, I was just meeting with them today. The Community Justice Council is made up of like Chief Morales, myself, the district attorney, the chief judge, probation and parole, various community group leaders. It's very, I mean, it's just a whole, all the major players, if you will, in the criminal justice system meet. So one thing I can say is this: the jail, back when I started in 2004 as a jail administrator, we had 4,000 inmates in the system. So we had about 1,600 in a 960 bed jail. You had another couple of thousand plus down at the House of Correction, over 4,000. Well, it varied between 3,600 and about 4,000 inmates in a really high, like summertime when most of the crime seems to happen. Today, the entire system, as I stated, today the number was on a chart I just saw, in fact it's right here, 1,930 inmates. So from 2004, if you will, down to now, the jail population, including the House of Correction, is halved, all right? So why is that happening? Well, there's a lot of different things that happen in the judicial system. One of the public outcries, like, okay, so somebody got caught with a little joint or something, a little bit of marijuana, so they were spending a lot of time in jail. The system has changed to where, if you will, the low-level nonviolent crimes, for the most part, are not being put into the jail system. So that, things like that have tremendously decreased it. Now we're talking about violent crime. I mean, Milwaukee still has an issue, we gotta be honest about that, right? 143, 41 homicides that happened in 16, 17, it was about 120, 125. And it's like, oh, we had a reduction. Well, that doesn't work for me, because even though there are a few less statistical deaths, you still got 120 people that died on our streets. That's not tenable. That's not tenable at all.
Jeff, the one thing too on programming, the distinction between the House of Correction and our jail, we have pretrial inmates, so some of them are only with us days or weeks, and then they report in for, and some may be with us longer for very high violent crimes. So it's a different ability to do programming that once they're at the House of Correction, they know they're going to be there a year. They can enter into programs or you know, things for work, job training or whatever. In our facility, because they may be only with us a short time, or they're coming in for a few days from state prisons to wait for a court date. So you can't have like a long-term program for them. So it's like a different environment, a different situation. They haven't been convicted yet.
So that's exactly correct. So what are we looking at? And you mentioned, how do you reduce crime in the city and so forth. So there's multiple prongs to that. Again, this Community Justice Council, they've basically been working on the correctional piece, how the judicial system is going to work, and there's been a decrease in what many people like to call mass incarceration has gone down. The crime element, and again, when we look at what is our responsibility. So unfortunately, and this isn't trying to push it off, but it's just the way it is, the Milwaukee Police Department has the brunt of the job here, because the majority of the unfortunate things that happen in the city, or happen in the county, actually are in Milwaukee. So the police chief is really tasked with coming up with the major plan to do that. All right, but what can the sheriff do? Because I'm not just going to say, oh, it's your problem, I'm not going to deal with it. I need to deal with it. So that's where, when I was talking about the force multiplier, the task force. So even though we're very, very small in number compared to them, we put deputies into the violent crime things. We're working on just something as simple as the traffic control that we're doing with Milwaukee Police Department and State Patrol. People get pulled over. A lot of them have warrants. They've got criminal records that are still open, and they didn't go to court or whatever, so there's warrants on them. So that's the little piece of the pie that we can do to help them. The violent crime things. Here's some more of my new initiatives that we're working on. So another huge issue is like human trafficking. So when you have, and the average age of young ladies being pulled into this, and children are at 13 years of age. So we're hitting the human trafficking piece, and that's one of my major initiatives that we're just kicking in with. We're doing some of the prostitution things, but again, why are the young ladies going out and getting involved in this? Well, a couple of things. One is they get kidnapped. There's that aspect where literally they just get yanked into us. I hate that with a passion. That's one of the things we're working on. Second thing is they get involved in the drug world. Okay, so here's your free opium, fentanyl, heroin, whatever they might be on, cocaine. They get yanked into the culture. I hate the word with a passion, the word pimp, but that's exactly what it is. These gentlemen, which is a stretch of the word, get the young ladies hooked on this stuff. They control them. So these are huge things that I hate. The society should hate. I always like to bring this up, though. If nobody was buying the product, they wouldn't have a job. So we've got a problem on both sides of the street. You know what I mean? We'll leave that at that for now. But these are things that just really we've got to work it with the force multiplier thing. We're multiple agencies working on these things. Nobody's got more cops than they need. We're all shorthanded, and I get that. So when we push people at a particular issue, then we can get some decent results.
That's
Sir.
right.
One of our alumni, VANG, graduate from UWM, he is, I think, serving under you now.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just took his name for you, that's who it was.
Yeah.
I wrote his name on
But
top.
my
Yeah.
question is,
Yeah.
we
And I
have,
wasn't, we go by last name, so I wasn't sure,
Yeah.
I had to double check.
That's wonderful.
so thank you for giving him the opportunity, but
Okay.
I'm
Deputy
sorry.
Bang is one of our,
Yeah,
your
your relationship to him was?
No.
I missed. Okay.
I'm a VANG too, but we're not related.
Okay, gotcha.
But Tao works at UW
UW.
Milwaukee as a counselor for Southeast Asian students.
Okay.
And hails out of UW Milwaukee.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have many veterans that are studying at UWM, and we have over 11,000 Southeast Asian in the Milwaukee metro area. Do you know the number of sheriffs that are of Asian or Southeast Asian?
Here's the answer, not enough. Okay, I don't know if you were in the room.
So then if we have veterans that they are in the process of graduating and they would like to get into the sheriff, is there a way that they can?
What's the process?
Yeah, the
I'm
process.
glad you brought that up, because right before you came in the room, was the first thing we discussed was we're actually hiring deputies as we speak. So for the next 2 weeks, we're
10 days.
Or 10 days, that's it. So for the next 10 days, we're recruiting deputies. So talked with these folks there, get the message out to the Asian community, because we are, in my opinion, we have way too few Asian officers right now, and I don't know why that is. If it's just, I don't know why. I'll just leave it at that. So I'm highly encouraging anyone who's 21 years of age, they have to have 60 college credits. It doesn't matter what field it's in, just 60 college credits from anywhere. That's it. They can apply. They can't have a felony type criminal, or they just can't have a criminal record. So no criminal record, 60 credit hours, and 21 years of age. They apply through the Milwaukee County website. They just go to the Human Resources part.
I'm gonna send that link to her next, so she can read, cause it's complicated to find on our website.
If you can send it to me.
But I'll send it directly to.
If you can send it to me too, that would be great. If you can put mine in your listserv, or if you have anything, like with the city of Milwaukee, with that job openings, I will get an email from them.
Yeah.
It would be great if I can do that too. That way
I have
I
your
can
email, can I
refer
send it to you?
Yes.
Yeah,
some
do
of
you
our
have
students that are ready to apply or
That's right.
to. And my name is VANG, and then my email is just my first name, Dao, DAO,
Thanks.
at uwm.edu.
And just your first name on the email?
Yes.
Okay, I'll send it to the three of you.
Yeah, Fran, Dow would definitely, especially for the deputy openings, would be a really great pipeline right there, just because he works so directly with our students who already have college credits.
Yes.
Yeah.
And many are veterans.
Yeah.
So
Now,
I'm
what-
going to forward you the news release that I sent out today and
Okay.
a link to
Sure.
get to the application process.
Sure, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then everyone else too, as Fran sends me that information, I'll make sure everyone else also gets that as well. I have a quick question, Sheriff, and then unfortunately I have to run out, but please you all stay as long as you need to, would like to, and thank you everyone from the community who is here today. So back to the drug issues as well as the human trafficking issues, that was in my notes to ask you about that. What efforts are going on from your office?
Yep.
As well as, do you kind of know statistically where our Asian American or even Hmong population, where we are part of those issues as well? Just so we are aware in our own community, what are some of these concerns we really have to start tackling?
Okay, the short answer is this. Again, I just popped into this in September, so the resources that up to this point we've been able to put at it, we've teamed up. I'll start with the prostitution and the human trafficking piece, and then we'll get to the drug piece.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we have a couple, just again, we've got 15 extra squads that I have to divvy up to do all these extra things, if you will, so it's not a lot. So we've had a couple of squads working with Milwaukee Police Department that have been going after some of the prostitution issues. Now, again, that is, it's kind of like trying to stop drunk driving or drug by going after the little teeny tiny dealer. That's not going to correct the problem, okay? And I know that. So what we're working on building as we speak is getting much more focused on who are the actual traffickers, where are they located, and getting to the real problem, not just the little fish in the sea, but the big fish, right? So that's in progress. So these things are literally being put together as we speak. Same with the drug thing. Now, again, when we were at 650 deputies, now we're down to 272. We used to have a very robust drug unit, but that's impossible now because we just don't have the staff. So how do you force multiply again? Well, again, we go to HIDTA, H-I-D-T-A, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Abatement. So we have a couple of our officers that are assigned to the federal task force that works with multiple agencies in Milwaukee County. We're adding another officer specific to the opioid, heroin, and fentanyl issue. So that is the only way that we can address it that way. Now, if you notice, if you watch network stations, on occasion you'll see when I get the opportunity, we're coming out really strong on this. It's like the public has to be educated. And the key issue, which I appreciate, I think the Hmong community is very strong. It's got a good structure to it. People care about people within the community. So it's when you start with mom and dad get the kids into a good educational system. The educators are doing their part. The faith-based community is doing its part. The community advocates are doing their part. Those that may fall into the trap. You've got to have programs, if you will, to, unfortunately it's on the back end, but the rehabilitation piece to get people cleaned up. Law enforcement should be the last resort, you know, and that's the way I look at it. So all these other levels have to be there, working strong, and that's why I really, and I'm not trying to be patronistic here, this community has a tremendous reputation for doing the things I just talked about, you know, and making a very strong, good community. So that's why I really appreciate being here, because I think this is a model community, and I sincerely mean that.
Right. You know, and I think more and more though, and maybe it could be because social media, right, is so accessible these days, but more and more you see so much of, especially the human trafficking and the drug trafficking happening within the community, and I think that's where, as a, you know, our organization doesn't do that type of work, right, but when you see it, you can't help but be so concerned that, wow, this is so prevalent in our community, and it could just be because it's that much more magnified because it's on social media. Maybe it's not that big of an issue, but that is where it would be nice if we could start getting the county and even the state to start collecting that kind of data so that our nonprofits throughout the state can really help to address some of those issues as well.
You just brought up one of the huge pieces. So, all right, so I have two daughters. They're both married now, but I have two daughters, and this issue of what was going on, I mean, several years ago really disturbed me as a father. So it's like, what's going on? And you see, you know, maybe on 2020 or something, you'll find out really severe case. You know, you got a van load of kids that got kidnapped and taken across the borders or whatever happens. So that disturbed me. So I said, let's get the data from Milwaukee.
Right.
So I went to the Milwaukee Police Department, I went to the state, and I'm like, what kind of data do we have on literal human trafficking? Guess how much I got?
I know.
0. So, well, we know about prostitutes on Greenfield or prostitutes on here or wherever. That's all that existed. So when I say this stuff is fresh, it is so fresh, which is why, and I'm serious, I'm really strong in this. We're pushing it with these. We're trying to get this task force going, because you know it's there.
Yeah.
But the community, quite frankly, I don't know who's hiding it, but it's really, really hard to uncover.
Yeah.
So, and I'll say this, if you become aware of things like that, you know, call my cell phone, say, hey, you know, I don't want to go public on this, but here's X is going on wherever, and, you know, then we can attack it. So we need information, and it's very hard to uncover.
Yeah.
It's very under the covers.
So, other than that, you know, how can us as the Asian or Hmong community, how can we support the sheriff office, or what is your ask from us?
Yeah, I appreciate that, because really it's my responsibility to take care of you.
Yeah.
But what can your community do? Well, again, I think we already mentioned a bunch of things that you are doing. The key things that any community does is, first of all, run a good community. You know, love your kids, get them good education, have good activities for them to keep them out of trouble. That just doesn't mean watching YouTube like my kids do. But good community things. It's very nice to meet you.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine. Great to see you.
I will definitely be in touch.
All right, thank you. We'll schedule another meeting when everybody can be here.
Yes, definitely, we'll do another one.
All right, great.
Take care.
The faith-based group, whatever particular, and I'm not sure all the different religions that may be involved with the Hmong community, but that's a big part of it. Community advocacies, different things like this group right here, what's taking place at the chamber, all the different pieces of it, the educational system. When all those things are tight and working, that's great, and I see a lot of that with the ladies organization, all important pieces to this. All right, so then what do we need? We need, when something's bad going down, you call us. That's pretty much it. If you know X is bad, this is going on, the best thing we can do, the citizens help us get information. So it's so important that we have that cooperative effort. If you don't call, if you don't trust me or you don't trust the police, and that's been one of the issues across the country. Well, we saw the police do something that we didn't like and we can't trust them anymore. That doesn't work, okay? Yeah, sometimes bad things happen. I'm not gonna try and discount that and people lose trust. Well, that's why I'm here. It's like, I wanna build trust, you get to know me, I get to know you. I'm just like, okay, the guy isn't so bad maybe, and we can trust the guy and tell him what's going on. That's what you can do. So, we learn to respect each other, work with each other. You've already got my respect. I'm brand new to your community, right? So you gotta watch me and say, is this guy all right or not, right? That's cool, I'm good with that. But when you do get to that point, it's like, yeah, let's call Rich, he can help us out. And, you know, just test me a few times.
I think it'll be great to build a partnership, especially with the sheriff office. I think especially with the Hmong politics-wise, when there's family issues, it tends to go through clan leaders instead of the police or that, you know, official punishment for them.
Okay.
I think hopefully with this, you know, we're able to build something to change that. I think that's just been my view growing up. There's always been issue, but instead of taking it to the police, it goes to the clan leaders. So.
I don't understand, and you mentioned 11,000 Asian students, I believe?
No, population,
Okay,
Southeast Asian
Twice as much
population.
population in the Milwaukee area.
okay. And I don't think you heard this, I had a Chinese foreign exchange student in high school that stayed with my family for about 3 years, which is another reason why I have a great love for, if you will, the Asian community. She's like a daughter to me, and she's going to graduate college this coming December. So, I mean, it's those relationships that it does build things. So, and I appreciate what you're saying, and again, that's why when I can meet the elders and so forth when they're available, and the rest of the folks, and when we can trust each other. And I love what this community does. I think it's a very, very, very strong community. It's a model community. So when we can work together, and maybe they gain a little more trust of law enforcement, which I get, you know, I understand. Maybe that changes then for the better. So.
We have a large community, but we are a quiet community. A lot of times, you know, we don't make noises. I think that we have a need, you know, in our community. I think that a lot of issues in our community that we need to report to, like the police or the sheriff, but a lot of times, due to lack of education, our community, we don't know what's reportable and what's not. And I think that that's something that if we have a stronger relationship with the sheriff or the Milwaukee police, maybe our community will know, you know, what we can report, what we can't report.
Yeah, and I mean, the easy answer to that question is, if you think there's something going on that is questionable, even however you want to define it, you should call somebody and say, hey, you know, call me, say, hey Rich, we got X going on in the community, what do you think? Hey, you can do that. I'll take the call. I keep this little electronic leash with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's like, just call me and say, hey, what do you think about X? You know, I'll be happy to talk to you.
You might know where to direct you, you know, if it's not our agency, and another, something
Right.
that's municipal, or just knowing where to go is part of the issue sometimes, and people try and make calls and don't reach the right person, so.
Yes.
Now, if you call me and say somebody threw a cigarette butt on the side of the street, I'll probably say, oh well, but, you know, if it's, you know, it is, and I get it. It's like, well, what is, and I don't mean to make light of it, because I know there's serious things sometimes, and it's like, man, do we really call the cops on this, or just kind of let it ride? And just call me, we'll talk it through. It's all good. Anybody else?
If someone comes across like a situation, so if we have like an immigrant that we're working with, and they come across, let's say like a deputy, and they haven't renewed any of their green cards or anything like that, will any of that information be shared with ICE at all? Is that something that we need to like communicate to them? If there's like information that's put into the system, will that be somehow transferred over and then potentially brought back to them where ICE can track them down?
Yeah, okay, you know, I honestly didn't even associate ICE with the Asian community, quite frankly, but I'm sure there are issues like that, okay, people that have immigrated in. Here's the short answer. Our officers do not do ICE work, period, okay? So if you call up, not meaning you, okay, so Jane Doe from the Asian community calls up, whether that person gets arrested or whether they're making a complaint about something, we do not ask about their immigration status, period, just doesn't happen. When if by chance someone's booked into our jail, okay, now if it's, let's go to the worst case scenario. So it's a very serious violent felony that maybe someone in the community committed and they're not legal in the system. Is it probable that ICE is going to do something about that? Yeah, because they probably don't have valid identification here. It's going to go through the system, and it's very probable that ICE is going to somehow get involved. But our deputies do not do that, okay? So what I tell people, and this has mainly been in different communities, not so much the Asian community, but if you have somebody who's being threatened or that's being criminally abused somehow, the community cannot be afraid to call the police, because then you just sit in terror the rest of your life. So and you'd have to check with Chief Morales, but when we've talked about this issue, their agency is on the same page. We don't ask about immigration status, we just don't. We take care of the problem. If someone needs to get arrested, they're gonna get arrested, okay? But it's not because of an immigration issue, it's because they committed some type of a crime. They're gonna come down, they're gonna get booked in, they're gonna get identified. If they're not in the system, that's how they're gonna end up going to ICE to determine, well, where did this person come from? So that's how they would kind of get brought into it. But outside of that, we absolutely do not touch that.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
I know it's a concern, it's a big concern.
Well, as the victim, do they get brought into ICE as well too?
No.
No, they don't ask for.
No, because I'm a big part of the community, and I do a lot of community recruiting through Google and everything, and also through the Ross and W2 program. Obviously, it's not what you're looking for, but in terms of other people that might know, how many individuals are you looking for in terms of deputies to fill open positions?
Yeah, 30 right now.
Oh, we're also always hiring for correctional officers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another category on the HR website, and if you want, I can send you that link separately.
I believe I did meet with two of the recruiters that were at the JC Penney job fair a couple weeks ago. They're really nice, they gave me a lot of good information too, so kudos to them. But yeah, I'll definitely...
That was probably our two of our other community relations deputies, Deputy Camarillo and Deputy Cologne, perhaps.
Two ladies, two ladies.
Oh, ladies, okay, that might have been HOC.
Okay.
Because they hire first,
HOC
HOC hires corrections officers and the Milwaukee County Jail does.
Gotcha.
They're separate categories.
Oh, okay.
So I will look up that link though and get it to you.
Okay.
I'll make it.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I do have a lot of individuals coming to me and asking, hey, what do you guys staff for?
Yeah.
And I just don't touch
Well,
that.
and
But I always point people in the right direction.
Yeah.
You know, and if I can't help them, that's what I do. That's what my goal is, and that's what I do for a living. Is I point people in the right direction if I can't help them. So.
Well, and a good thing to know is that the CO positions are sometimes a nice stepping stone to become a deputy if they don't have all the other requirements in place yet for the deputy sheriff hiring.
Okay.
So that they get into the field of law enforcement and then they can wait for another opening and have kind of a leg up, so to speak, on maybe getting into those slots.
Sure.
So I said 30, it's probably closer to the 20 range for the deputies, which is the much better paying cop job, right? The correctional officer job, the House of Correction, I think they only have to be 18 years old and have a high school education. No criminal record. To be a correctional officer at the jail downtown, which happens to deal with much higher bail, violent felon type things, they have to be 21, a high school education, no criminal record. So 18 to go to the House, no criminal record. Or very minor, let's say, little...
Traffic things,
Yeah.
citations don't count.
Yeah, traffic doesn't count unless it's drunk driving, that could count. I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, that's kind of the guideline, again, everything through human resources through Milwaukee County.